the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Vana Parva. Section 52, Nalopakyana Parva. Janamejaya said, when the high-souled Parth went to Indra's region for obtaining weapons, what did Yudhishthira and the other sons of Pandu do? Vasampayana said, when the high-souled Parth went to Indra's region for obtaining weapons, those bulls of the Bharata race continued to dwell with Krishna in the woods of Kamyak. One day, those foremost of the Bharatas, afflicted with grief, were seated with Krishna on a clean and solitary sward. Grieving for Dhananjaya, overwhelmed with sorrow, their voices were choked with weeping. Tortured by Dhananjaya's absence, grief afflicted them equally. And filled with sorrow at their separation from Arjuna and at the loss of their kingdom, the mighty armed Bhima among them addressed Yudhishthira, saying, that bull of the Bharata race, Arjuna, O great king, on whom depend the lives of Pandu's sons, and on whose death the Panchalas as also ourselves with our sons and Satyaki and Vasudeva are sure to die, hath gone away at thy behest. What can be sadder than this, that the virtuous Vibhatsu hath gone away at thy command, thinking of his many griefs? Depending upon the might of that illustrious hero's arms, regard our foes as already vanquished in battle, and the whole earth itself as already acquired by us. It was for the sake of that mighty warrior that I refrained from sending to the other world all the Dhritarashtras along with the Suvalas, in the midst of the assembly. Gifted with might of arms, and supported by Vasudeva, we have to suppress the wrath that hath been roused in us, because thou art the root of that wrath. Indeed, with Krishna's help, slaying our foes headed by Karna, we are able to rule the entire earth thus conquered by our own arms. Endued with manliness, we are yet overwhelmed with calamities, in consequence of thy gambling wise, while the foolish sons of Dhritarashtra are growing stronger with the tributes gathered from dependent kings. O mighty monarch, it behoveth thee to keep in view the duties of the Kshatriya. O great king, it is not the duty of a Kshatriya to live in the woods. The wise are of the opinion that to rule is the foremost duty of a Kshatriya. O king, thou art conversant with Kshatriya morality. Do not, therefore, deviate from the path of duty. Turning away from the woods, let us, summoning Parth and Janardana, slay, O king, the sons of Dhritarashtra, even before the 12 years are complete. O illustrious monarch, O king of kings, even if these Dhritarashtras be surrounded by soldiers in array of battle, I shall send them to the other world by dint of might alone. I shall slay all the sons of Dhritarashtra along with the Suvalas, indeed, Duryodhan, Karna, and anyone else that will fight with me. And after I shall have slain all our foes, thou mayst come back unto the woods. By acting thus, O king, no fault will be thine. Or if any sin be thine, or represser of foes, O mighty monarch, washing it off, O sire, by various sacrifices, we may ascend to a superior heaven. Such a consummation may come to pass, if our king prove it not unwise or procrastinating. Thou art, however, virtuous. Verily the deceitful should be destroyed by deceit. To slay the deceitful by deceit, is not regarded as sinful. O Bharata, it is also said by those versed in morality that one day and night is, O great prince, equal unto a full year. The Veda text also, exalted one, is often heard, signifying that a year is equivalent to a day when passed in the observance of certain difficult vows. O thou of unfading glory, if the Vedas are an authority with thee, regard thou the period of a day and something more as the equivalent of 13 years. O repressor of foes, this is the time to slay Duryodhan with his adherents. Else, O king, he will beforehand bring the whole earth obedient to his will. O foremost of monarchs, all this is the result of thy addiction to gambling. We are on the verge of destruction already, in consequence of thy promise of living 1 year undiscovered. I do not find the country where if we leave, the wicked-minded Suyodhana may not be able to trace us by his spies, and finding us out, that wretch will again deceitfully send us into such exile in the woods. Or if that sinful one behold at us emerge, after the expiry of the pledged period of non-discovery, he will again invite thee, O great king, to dice, and the play will once more begin. Summoned once more, thou wilt again efface thyself at dice. Thou art not skilled at dice, and when summoned at play, thou wilt be deprived of thy senses. Therefore, O mighty monarch, thou wilt have to lead a life in the woods again. If, O mighty king, it behoveth thee not to make us wretched for life, observe thou fully the ordinance of the Vedas, which inculcateth that verily the deceitful ought to be slain by deceit. If I but have thy command, I would go to Hastinapura, and even as fire falling upon a heap of grass consumeth it, would slay Duryodhan, putting forth my utmost might. It behoveth thee, therefore, to grant me the permission. Vasampayana continued, thus addressed by Bhima, King Yudhishthira the Just, smelt the crown of that son of Pandu, and pacifying him said, O mighty armed one, without doubt thou wilt, assisted by the wielder of the Gandiva, slay Suyodhana at the expiry of the 13th year. But, O son of Pritha, as for thy assertion, O Lord, the time is complete, I cannot dare tell an untruth, for untruth is not in me. O son of Kunti, without the help of fraud, wilt thou kill the wicked and irrepressible Duryodhan, with his allies? While Yudhishthira the Just was speaking unto Bhima thus, there came the great and illustrious Rishi Brihadasva before them. And beholding that virtuous ascetic before him, the righteous king worshipped him according to the ordinance, with the offering of Madhupaka. And when the ascetic was seated and refreshed, the mighty armed Yudhishthira sat by him, and looking up at the former, addressed him thus in exceedingly piteous accents, O Holy One, summoned by cunning gamblers skilled at dice, I have been deprived of wealth and kingdom through gambling. I am not an adept at dice, and am unacquainted with deceit. Sinful men, by unfair means, vanquished me at play. They even brought into the public assembly my wife, dearer unto me than life itself. And defeating me a second time, they have sent me to distressful exile in this great forest, clad in deer skins. At present I am leading a distressful life in the woods in grief of heart. Those harsh and cruel speeches they addressed me on the occasion of that gambling match, and the words of my afflicted friends relating to the match at dice and other subjects, are all stored up in my remembrance. Recollecting them I passed the whole night in sleepless anxiety. Deprived also of the company of the illustrious wielder of the Gandiva, on whom depend the lives of us all, I am almost deprived of life. Oh, when shall I see the sweet-speeched and large-hearted Vivatsu so full of kindness and activity, return to us, having obtained all weapons? Is there a king on this earth who is more unfortunate than myself? Hast thou ever seen or heard of any such before? To my thinking, there is no man more wretched than I am. Brihadasva said, O great king, O son of Pandu, thou sayest, there is no person more miserable than I am. O sinless monarch, if thou wilt listen, I will relate unto thee the history of a king more wretched than thyself. Vasampayana continued, and thereupon the king said unto the ascetic, O illustrious one, tell me, I desire to hear the history of the king who had fallen into such a condition. Vrihadasva said, O king, O thou that never fallest off, listen attentively with thy brothers. I will narrate the history of a prince more miserable than thyself. There was a celebrated king among the Nishadhas, named Virasena. He had a son named Nala, versed in the knowledge of virtue and wealth. It hath been heard by us that king was deceitfully defeated by Pushkara, and afflicted with calamity. He dwelt in the woods with his spouse. And, O king, while he was living in the forest, he had neither slaves nor cars, neither brothers nor friends with him. But thou art surrounded by thy heroic brothers like unto the celestials, and also by foremost regenerate ones like unto Brahma himself. Therefore, it behoveth thee not to grieve. Yudhishthira said, I am anxious to hear in detail, O thou foremost of eloquent men, the history of the illustrious Nala. It behoveth thee therefore to relate it unto me. Thus ends the 52nd section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 53, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, there was a king named Nala, the son of Virasena. And he was strong, and handsome, and well versed in the knowledge of horses, and possessed of every desirable accomplishment. And he was at the head of all the kings, even like the Lord of the Celestials. And exalted over all, he resembled the sun in glory. And he was the king of the Nishadhas, intent on the welfare of the Brahmanas, versed in the Vedas, and possessed of heroism. And he was truth-telling, fond of dice, and the master of a mighty army. And he was the beloved of men and women, and of great soul and subdued passions. And he was the protector of all, and the foremost of bowmen, and like unto Manu himself. And like him, there was among the Vidarbhas a king named Bhima, of terrible prowess, heroic and well disposed towards his subjects, and possessed of every virtue. But withal he was childless. And with a fixed mind, he tried his utmost for obtaining issue. And, O Bharata, there came unto him once a Brahmarshi named Damna. And, O king of kings, desirous of having offspring, Bhima, versed in morality with his queen, gratified that illustrious rishi by a respectful reception. And Damna, well pleased, granted unto the king and his consort a boon in the form of a jewel of a daughter, and 3 sons possessed of lofty souls and great fame. And they were called respectively Damayanti and Dama and Dant, and illustrious Damna. And the 3 sons were possessed of every accomplishment and terrible mien and fierce prowess. And the slender-waisted Damayanti, in beauty and brightness, in good name and grace and luck, became celebrated all over the world. And on her attaining to age, hundreds of handmaids and female slaves decked in ornaments waited upon her like Sachi herself. And Bhima's daughter of faultless features, decked in every ornament, shone in the midst of her handmaids, like the luminous lightning of the clouds. And the large-eyed damsel was possessed of great beauty like that of Shri herself. And neither among celestials, nor among yakshas, nor among men was anybody possessed of such beauty, seen or heard of before. And the beautiful maiden filled with gladness the hearts of even the gods. And that tiger among men, Nala also had not his peer in the 3 worlds, for in beauty he was like Gandharva himself in his embodied form. And moved by admiration, The heralds again and again celebrated the praises of Nala before the Damayanti and those of the Damayanti before the ruler of the Nishadas. And repeatedly hearing of each other's virtues they conceived an attachment towards each other not begot of sight, and that attachment, O son of Kunti, began to grow in strength. And then Nala was unable to control the love that was in his bosom. And he began to pass much of his time in solitude in the gardens adjoining the inner apartment of his palace. And there he saw a number of swans furnished with golden wings, wandering in those woods. And from among them he caught one with his hands. And thereupon the sky-ranging one said unto Nala, Deserve I not to be slain by thee? O king, I will do something that is agreeable to thee. O king of the Nishadas, I will speak of thee before the Damayanti in such a way that she will not ever desire to have any other person for her lord. Thus addressed, the king liberated that swan. And those swans then rose on their wings and went to the country of the Vidarbhas. And on arriving at the city of the Vidarbhas the birds alighted before the Damayanti, who beheld them all. And the Damayanti in the midst of her maids, beholding those birds of extraordinary appearance was filled with delight, and strove without loss of time to catch those coursers of the skies. And the swans at this, before that bevy of beauties, fled in all directions. And those maidens there pursued the birds, each running after one. And the swan after which the Damayanti ran, having led her to a secluded spot, addressed her in human speech, saying, O Damayanti, there is a king amongst the Nishadas named Nala. He is equal unto the Aswins in beauty, not having his peer among men. Indeed, in comeliness, he is like Kandharp himself in his embodied form. O fair complexioned one, O thou of slender waist, if thou becomest his wife, thy existence and this thy beauty may be of purpose. We have indeed beheld celestials and Gandharvas and Nagas and Rakshasas and men, but never saw we before any one like Nala. Thou also art a jewel among thy sex, as Nala is the prime among men. The union of the best with the best is happy. Thus addressed by the swan, the Damayanti, O monarch, replied unto him there, saying, Do thou speak thus unto Nala also, saying so be it, to the daughter of Vidarbha, the oviparous one, O king, returned to the country of the Nishadas, and related everything unto Nala. Thus ends the 53rd section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 54, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, O Bharata, hearing those words of the swan, Damayanti thenceforth lost all peace of mind on account of Nala. And heaving frequent sighs she was filled with anxiety, and became melancholy and pale-faced and lean. And with her heart possessed by the god of love, she soon lost colour, and with her upturned gaze and modes of abstraction, looked like one demented. And she lost all inclination for beds and seats and objects of enjoyment. And she ceased to lie down by day or night, always weeping with exclamation of oh and alas. And beholding her uneasy and fallen into that condition, her handmaids represented, O king, the matter of her illness unto the ruler of Vidarbha by indirect hints. And King Bhima, hearing of this from the handmaids of Damayanti, regarded the affair of his daughter to be serious. And he asked himself, Why is it that my daughter seemeth to be so ill now? And the king, reflecting by himself that his daughter had attained to puberty, concluded that the Menaref's Swayamvara should take place. And the monarch, O exalted one, invited all the rulers of the earth, saying, Ye heroes, know that Damayanti's Swayamvara is at hand. And all the kings, hearing of Damayanti's Swayamvara, came unto Bhima, agreeable to his message, filling the earth with the clatter of their cars, the roar of their elephants, and the neighing of their horses, and accompanied with their fine-looking battalions decked in ornaments and graceful garlands. And the mighty armed Bhima paid due reverence unto those illustrious monarchs. And duly honored by him they took up their quarters there. And at the juncture, those foremost of celestial rishis possessed of great splendor, of great wisdom and great woes, namely, Narada and Parvata, having arrived in course of their wandering at the regions of Indra, entered the mansion of the Lord of the Immortals, receiving proper worship. And Magvat, having worshipped them reverentially, inquired after their undisturbed peace and welfare as regards all respects. And Narada said, O Lord, O Divine One, peace attendeth us in every respect. And, O Magvat, peace attendeth also, O Exalted One, the kings of the whole world. Vrihadasva continued, hearing the words of Narada, the slayer of Vala and Vritra said, those righteous rulers of the earth who fight renouncing all desire of life, and who meet death when their time is come by means of weapons, without flying from the field, theirs is this region, everlasting unto them and granting all desires, even as it is to me. Where be those Kshatriya heroes? I do not see those kings approach now. Where are my favorite guests? Thus addressed by Sakra, Narada replied, Listen, O Magvat, why sayest not thou the kings now? The ruler of the Vidarbhas hath a daughter, the celebrated Damayanti. In beauty she transcendeth all the women of the earth. Her Swayamvara, O Sakra, will take place shortly. Thither are going all the kings and princes from all directions. And all the lords of the earth desired to have that pearl of the earth, desired to have her eagerly, O slayer of Vala and Vritra. And while they were talking thus, those foremost of the immortals, the Lohpalas with Agni among them, appeared before the Lord of the Celestials. And all of them heard the words of Narada fraught with grave import. And as soon as they heard them, they exclaimed in rapture, We also will go there. And, O mighty monarch, accompanied by their attendants and mounted on their respective vehicles, they set out for the country of Vidarbhas, whither had gone all the kings. And, O son of Kunti, the high-souled king Nala, also hearing of that concourse of kings, set out with a cheerful heart, full of Damayanti's love. And it came to pass that the gods saw Nala on the way treading on the earth. And his form owing to its beauty was like that of the god of love himself. And beholding him resplendent as the sun, the Lokpalas were filled with astonishment at his wealth of beauty, and abandoned their intention. And, O king, leaving their cars in the sky, the dwellers of heaven alighted from the welkin, and spake unto the ruler of the Nishadas, saying, O foremost of monarchs ruling the Nishadas, O Nala, thou art devoted to truth. Do thou help us, O best of men, be thou our messenger. Thus ends the 54th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 55, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrishtasva continued, O Bharata, Nala pledged his word to the celestials saying, I will do it. And then approaching these, he asked with folded hands, Who are ye? And who also is he that desireth me to be his messenger? And what, further, shall I have to do for you? O tell me truly. When the king of the Nishadas spoke thus, Magvat replied, saying, Know us as the immortals come hither for Damayanti's sake. I am Indra, this one is Agni, this, the Lord of waters, and this, O king, is even Yam, the destroyer of the bodies of men. Do thou inform Damayanti of our arrival, saying, "The guardians of the world, consisting of the great Indra and the others, are coming to the assembly, desirous of beholding the Swayamvara. The gods, Sakra and Agni and Varuna and Yam, desire to obtain thee. Do thou therefore choose one of them for thy lord." Thus addressed by Sakra, Nala said with joined hands, "I have come here with the self-same object. It behoveth thee not to send me on this errand. How can a person who is himself under the influence of love bring himself to speak thus unto a lady on behalf of others? Therefore, spare me, ye gods." The gods however said, "O ruler of the Nishadas," having promised first, saying, "I will," why wilt thou not act accordingly now? O ruler of the Nishadas, tell us this without delay. Vrihadasva continued, thus addressed by those celestials, the ruler of Nishadas spake again, saying, "Those mansions are well guarded. How can I hope to enter them?" Indra replied, "Thou shalt be able to enter." And, saying, "So be it." Nala thereupon went to the palace of Damayanti. And having arrived there, he beheld the daughter of the king of Vidarbha surrounded by her handmaids, blazing in beauty and excelling in symmetry of form, of limbs exceedingly delicate, of slender waist and fair eyes. And she seemed to rebuke the light of the moon by her own splendor. And as he gazed on that lady of sweet smiles, Nala's love increased, but desirous of keeping his truth, he suppressed his passion. And at the sight of Nashada, overpowered by his effulgence, those first of women sprang up from their seats in amazement. And filled with wonder at his sight, they praised Nala in gladness of heart. And without saying anything, they mentally paid him homage. "Oh, what beauty! Oh, what comeliness! Oh, what gentleness belongeth to this high-souled one! Who is he? Is he some god or yaksh or Gandharv?" And those foremost of women, confounded by Nala's splendor and bashfulness, would not accost him at all in speech. And Damayanti, although herself struck with amazement, smilingly addressed the warlike Nala, who also gently smiled at her, saying, "What art thou, O thou of faultless features, that hast come here awakening my love? O sinless one, O hero of celestial form, I am anxious to know who thou art that hast come hither. And why hast thou come hither? And how is it that thou hast not been discovered by any one, considering that my apartments are well guarded and the king's mandates are stern?" Thus addressed by the daughter of the king of the Vidarbhas, Nala replied, "O beauteous lady, know that my name is Nala. I come here as the messenger of the gods. The celestials, Sakra, Agni, Varuna and Yam, desire to have thee. O beautiful lady, do thou choose one of them for thy lord. It is through their power that I have entered here unperceived, and it is for this reason that none saw me on my way or obstructed my entrance. O gentle one, I have been sent by the foremost of the celestials even for this object. Hearing this, O fortunate one, do what thou pleasest." Thus ends the 55th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 56, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, Damayanti, having bowed down unto the gods, thus addressed Nala with a smile, "O king, love me with proper regard, and command me what I shall do for thee. Myself and what else of wealth is mine are thine. Grant me, O exalted one, thy love in full trust. O king, the language of the swans is burning me. It is for thy sake, O hero, that I have caused the kings to meet. O giver of proper honor, if thou forsake me who adore thee, for thy sake will I resort to poison, or fire, or water or the rope. Thus addressed by the daughter of the king of the Vidarbhas, Nala answered her saying, with the Lokpalas present, choosest thou a man? Do thou turn thy heart to those high-souled lords, the creators of the worlds, unto the dust of whose feet I am not equal. Displeasing the gods, a mortal cometh by death. Save me, O thou of faultless limbs. Choose thou the all-excelling celestials. By accepting the gods, do thou enjoy spotless robes, and celestial garlands of variegated hues, and excellent ornaments. What woman would not choose as her lord Hutasna, the chief of the celestials, who compassing the earth swalloweth it? What woman would not choose him as her lord, the dread of whose make induceth all creatures to tread the path of virtue? And what woman would not choose as her lord the virtuous and high-souled Mahendra, the lord of the celestials, the chastiser of Daityas and Danvas? Or, if thou couldst choose in thy heart Varuna amongst the Lokpalas, do so unhesitatingly. O accept this friendly advice. Thus addressed by Nashada, Damayanti, with eyes bathed in tears of grief spake thus unto Nala, O Lord of the earth, bowing to all the gods, I choose thee for my lord. Truly do I tell thee this. The king, who had come as the messenger of the gods, replied unto the trembling Damayanti standing with folded hands, O amiable one, do as thou pleasest. Having given my pledge, O blessed one, unto the gods in especial, how can I, having come on others' mission, dare seek my own interest? If seeking my own interest consists with virtue, I will seek it, and do thou also, O beauteous one, act accordingly. Then the Damayanti of luminous smiles slowly spake unto King Nala, in words choked with tears, O Lord of men, I see a blameless way, by which no sin whatever will attach unto thee. O King, do thou, O foremost of men, come to the Swayamvara in company with all the gods headed by Indra. There, O monarch, in the presence of the Lokpalas I will, O tiger among men, choose thee, at which no blame will be thine. Thus addressed, O monarch, by the daughter of Vidarbha, King Nala returned to where the gods were staying together, and beholding him approach those great gods, the Lokpalas, eagerly asked him about all that had happened, saying, Hast thou, O king, seen the Damayanti of sweet smiles? What hath she said unto us all? O sinless monarch, tell us everything. Nala answered, Commanded by you I entered the Damayanti's palace furnished with lofty portals guarded by veteran warders bearing wands. And as I entered, no one perceived me, by virtue of your power, except the princess. And I saw her handmaids, and they also saw me. And, O exalted celestials, seeing me, they were filled with wonder. And as I spake unto her of you, the fair-faced maiden, her will fixed on me, O ye best of the gods, chose me for her spouse. And the maiden said, Let the gods, O tiger among men, come with thee to the Swayamvara, I will in their presence, choose thee. At this, O thou of mighty arms, no blame will attach to thee. This is all, ye gods, that took place, as I have said. Finally, everything rests with you, ye foremost of celestials. Thus ends the 56th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 57, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva continued, then at the sacred hour of the holy lunar day of the auspicious season, King Bhima summoned the kings to the Swayamvara. And hearing of it, all the lords of earth smit with love speedily came thither, desirous of possessing the Damayanti, and the monarchs entered the amphitheatre decorated with golden pillars and a lofty portal arch, like mighty lions entering the mountain wilds. And those lords of earth decked with fragrant garlands and polished earrings hung with jewels seated themselves on their several seats. And that sacred assembly of kings, graced by those tigers among men, resembled the Bhogavate swarming with the Nagas, or a mountain cavern with tigers. And their arms were robust, and resembling iron maces, and well-shaped, and graceful, and looking like five-headed snakes. And graced with beautiful locks and fine noses and eyes and brows, the countenance of the kings shone like stars in the firmament. And when the time came, Damayanti of beauteous face, stealing the eyes and hearts of the princes by her dazzling light, entered the hall. And the glances of those illustrious kings were riveted to those parts of her person where they had chanced to fall first, without moving at all. And when, O Bharata, the names of the monarchs were proclaimed, the daughter of Bhima saw 5 persons all alike in appearance. And beholding them seated there, without difference of any kind in form, doubt filled her mind, and she could not ascertain which of them was King Nala. And at whomsoever among them she looked, she regarded him to be the king of the Nishadas. And filled with anxiety, the beauteous one thought within herself, "Oh, how shall I distinguish the celestials, and how discern the royal Nala?" And thinking thus, the daughter of Vidar became filled with grief. And, O Bharata, recollecting the marks belonging to the celestials, of which she had heard, she thought, "Those attributes of the celestials, of which I have heard from the aged, do not pertain to any of these deities present here upon the earth." And revolving the matter long in her mind, and reflecting upon it repeatedly, she decided upon seeking the protection of the gods themselves. And bowing down unto them with mind and speech, with folded hands, she addressed them trembling, "Since I heard the speech of the swans, I chose the king of the Nishadas as my lord. For the sake of truth, oh, let the gods reveal him to me. And as in thought or word I have never swerved from him, oh, let the gods, for the sake of that truth, reveal him to me. And as the gods themselves have destined the ruler of the Nishadas to be my lord, oh, let them, for the sake of that truth, reveal him to me. And as it is for paying homage unto Nala that I have adopted this vow, for the sake of that truth, oh, let the gods reveal him unto me, oh, let the exalted guardians of the worlds assume their own proper forms, so that I may know the righteous king." Hearing these piteous words of Damayanti, and ascertaining her fixed resolve, and fervent love for the king of Nishadas, the purity of her heart and her inclination and regard and affection for Nala, the gods did as they had been adjured, and assumed their respective attributes as best they could. And thereupon she beheld the celestials unmoistened with perspiration, with winkless eyes, and unfading garlands, unstained with dust, and staying without touching the ground. And Nashada stood revealed to his shadow, his fading garlands, himself stained with dust and sweat, resting on the ground with winking eyes. And, O Bharata, discerning the gods and the virtuous Nala, the daughter of Bhima chose Nashada according to her truth. And the large-eyed damsel then bashfully caught the hem of his garment and placed round his neck a floral wreath of exceeding grace. And when that fair-complexioned maiden had thus chosen Nala for her husband, the kings suddenly broke out into exclamations of "Oh!" and "Alas!" and "O Bharata!" The gods and the great rishis in wonder cried "Excellent! Excellent!" applauding the king the while. And, O Kavya, the royal son of Virasena, with heart filled with gladness, comforted the beauteous Damayanti, saying, "Since thou, O blessed one, hast chosen a mortal in the presence of the celestials, know me for a husband even obedient to thy command. And, O thou of sweet smiles, truly do I tell thee this, that as long as life continueth in this body of mine, I will remain thine and thine alone. Damayanti also, with folded hands paid homage unto Nala in words of like import. And the happy pair beholding Agni and the other gods mentally sought their protection. And after the daughter of Bhima had chosen Nashadha as her husband, the Lokpalas of exceeding effulgence with pleased hearts, bestowed on Nala 8 boons. And Sakra, the lord of Sachi, bestowed on Nala the boon that he should be able to behold his godship in sacrifices and that he should attain to blessed regions thereafter. And Hutasna bestowed on him the boon of his own presence whenever Nashadha wished, and regions also bright as himself. And Yam granted him subtle taste in food as well as preeminence in virtue. And the Lord of Waters granted Nala his own presence whenever he desired, and also garlands of celestial fragrance. And thus each of them bestowed upon him a couple of boons. And having bestowed these, the gods went to heaven. And the kings also, having witnessed with wonder Damayanti's selection of Nala, returned delighted whence they had come. And on the departure of those mighty monarchs, the high-souled Bhima, well pleased, celebrated the wedding of Nala and Damayanti. And having stayed there for a time according to his desire, Nashadha, the best of men, returned to his own city with the permission of Bhima. And having attained that pearl of a woman, the virtuous king, O monarch, began to pass his days in joy, like the slayer of Vala and Vritra in the company of Sachi, and resembling the sun in glory, the king, full of gladness began to rule his subjects righteously, and gave them great satisfaction. And like unto Yayati, the son of Nahursha, that intelligent monarch celebrated the horse sacrifice and many other sacrifices with abundant gifts to Brahmanas. And like unto a very god, Nala sported with Damayanti in romantic woods and groves. And the high-minded king begat upon Damayanti a son named Indrasena, and a daughter named Indrasenia. And celebrating sacrifice, and sporting with Damayanti thus, the king ruled the earth abounding in wealth. Thus ends the 57th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 58, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, when the blazing guardians of the worlds were returning after the daughter of Bhima had chosen Nashadha, on their way they met Dwapra with Kali approaching towards them. And seeing Kali, Sakra the slayer of Vala and Vritra, said, O Kali, say whither thou art going with Dwapra. And thereupon Kali replied unto Sakra, going to Damayanti's Swayamvara, will I obtain her for my wife, as my heart is fixed upon that damsel. Hearing this, Indra said with a smile, that Swayamvara is already ended. In our sight she hath chosen Nala for her husband. Thus answered by Sakra, Kali, that vilest of the celestials, filled with wrath, addressing all those gods spake, since in the presence of the celestials she hath chosen a mortal for her lord, it is meet that she should undergo a heavy doom. Upon hearing these words of Kali, the celestials answered, it is with our sanction that Damayanti hath chosen Nala. What damsel is there that would not choose King Nala endued with every virtue, well versed in all duties, always conducting himself with rectitude? He hath studied the 4 Vedas together with the Puranas that are regarded as the 5th. Leading a life of harmlessness unto all creatures, he is truth-telling and firm in his vows, and in his house the gods are ever gratified by sacrifices held according to the ordinance. In that tiger among men, that king resembling a Lokpala, is truth, and forbearance and knowledge, and asceticism and purity, and self-control and perfect tranquility of soul. O Kali, the fool that wisheth to curse Nala bearing such a character, curseth himself, and destroyeth himself by his own act. And, O Kali, he that seeketh to curse Nala crowned with such virtues, sinketh into the wide bottomless pit of hell rife with torments. Having said this to Kali and Dwapra, the gods went to heaven. And when the gods had gone away, Kali said unto Dwapra, I am ill able, O Dwapra, to suppress my anger. I shall possess Nala, deprive him of his kingdom, and he shall no more sport with Bhima's daughter. Entering the dais, it behoveth thee to help me. Thus ends the 58th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 59, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, having made this compact with Dwapra, Kali came to the place where the king of the Nishadas was. And always watching for a hole, he continued to dwell in the country of the Nishadas for a long time. And it was in the 12th year that Kali saw a hole. For one day after answering the call of nature, Nashada touching water said his twilight prayers, without having previously washed his feet. And it was through this omission that Kali entered his person. And having possessed Nala, he appeared before Pushkara, and addressed him, saying, Come and play at dice with Nala. Through my assistance thou wilt surely win at the play. And defeating King Nala and acquiring his kingdom, do thou rule the Nishadas. Thus exhorted by Kali, Pushkara went to Nala. And Dwapra also approached Pushkara, becoming the principal die called Vrisha. And appearing before the warlike Nala, that slayer of hostile heroes, Pushkara, repeatedly said, Let us play together with dice. Thus challenged in the presence of the Mayanti, the lofty-minded king could not long decline it. And he accordingly fixed the time for the play. And possessed by Kali, Nala began to lose in the game, his stakes in gold and silver, and cars with the teams thereof, and robes. And maddened at dice, no one amongst his friends could succeed in dissuading that represser of foes from the play that went on. And thereupon, O Bharata, the citizens in a body, with the chief councillors, came thither to behold the distressed monarch and make him desist. And the charioteer coming to the Mayanti spake to her of this, saying, O lady, the citizens and officers of the state wait at the gate. Do thou inform the king of the Nishadas that the citizens have come here, unable to bear the calamity that hath befallen their king conversant with virtue and wealth. Thereupon Bhima's daughter, overwhelmed with grief and almost deprived of reason by it, spake unto Nala in choked accents, O king, the citizens with the councillors of state, urged by loyalty, stay at the gate desirous of beholding thee. It behoveth thee to grant them an interview, but the king, possessed by Kali, uttered not a word in reply unto his queen of graceful glances, uttering thus her lamentations. And at this, those councillors of state as also the citizens, afflicted with grief and shame, returned to their homes, saying, He liveth not. And, O Yudhishthira, it was thus that Nala and Pushkara gambled together for many months, the virtuous Nala being always worsted. Thus ends the 59th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 60, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, Bhima's daughter, the cool-headed Damayanti, seeing the righteous king maddened and deprived of his senses at dice, was filled, O king, with alarm and grief. And she thought the affair to be a serious one with the king. and apprehensive of the calamity that threatened Nala, yet seeking his welfare and at last understanding that her lord had lost everything, she said unto her nurse and maidservant Vrihatsena of high fame, intent upon her good, dexterous in all duties, faithful and sweet speech, these words, O Vrihatsena, go thou and summon the counsellors in the name of Nala, and tell them also what of wealth and other things hath been lost and what remaineth. The counsellors then, hearing of Nala's summons, said, This is fortunate for us, and approached the king. And when the subjects in a body had, thus, come a second time, the daughter of Bhima informed Nala of it. But the king regarded her not. Finding her husband disregarding her words, Damayanti, filled with shame, returned to her apartments. And hearing that the dice were uniformly unfavorable to the virtuous Nala, and that he had lost everything, she again spake unto her nurse, saying, For O Vrihatsena, go thou again in Nala's name to bring hither, O blessed one, the charioteer, Varshneya. The matter at hand is very serious. And Vrihatsena, hearing those words of Damayanti, caused Varshneya to be summoned by trusty servants. And the blameless daughter of Bhima, acquainted with conduct suitable to time and place, addressing soft words said according to the occasion, Thou knowest how the king hath always behaved towards thee. He is now in difficulty, and it behoveth thee to assist him. The more the king loseth to Pushkara, the greater becometh his ardour for the play. And as the dice fall obedient to Pushkara, it is seen that they are adverse to Nala in the matter of the play. And absorbed in the play, he heedeth not the words of his friends and relatives, nor even those of mine. I do not think, however, that in this the high-soiled Nashadha is to blame, inasmuch as the king regarded not my words, being absorbed in play. O charioteer, I seek thy protection. Do my behest. My mind misgiveth me. The king may come to grief. Yoking Nala's favourite horses endued with the fleetness of the mind, do thou take these twins, my son and daughter, on the car and hie thou to Kundina. Leaving the children there with my kindred as also the car and the horses, either stay thou there, or go to any other place as it listeth thee. Varshneya, the charioteer of Nala, then reported in detail these words of Damayanti unto the chief officers of the king. And having settled the matter, in consultation with them, and obtaining their assent, O mighty monarch, the charioteer started for Vidarbha, taking the children on that car. And leaving there the boy Indrasena and the girl Indrasena, as also that best of cars and those steeds, the charioteer, with a sad heart grieving for Nala, bade farewell unto Bhima. And wandering for some time, he arrived at the city of Ayodhya. And there he appeared with a sorrowful heart before King Rituparna, and entered the service of that monarch as charioteer. Thus ends the 60th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 61, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, after Varshneya had gone away, Pushkara won from the righteous Nala the latter's kingdom and what else of wealth he had. And unto Nala, O king, who had lost his kingdom, Pushkara laughingly said, Let the play go on. But what stake hast thou now? Damayanti only remaineth, all else of thine hath been won by me. Well, if thou likest, that Damayanti be our stake now. Hearing these words of Pushkara, the virtuous king felt as if his heart would burst in rage, but he spake not a word. And gazing at Pushkara in anguish, King Nala of great fame took all the ornaments of every part of his body, and attired in a single piece of cloth, his body uncovered, renouncing all his wealth, and enhancing the grief of friends, the king set out. And Damayanti, clad in one piece of cloth, followed him behind as he was leaving the city. And coming to the outskirts of the city, Nala stayed there for 3 nights with his wife. But Pushkara, O king, proclaimed through the city that he that should show any attention to Nala, would be doomed to death. And on account of these words of Pushkara and knowing his malice towards Nala, the citizens, O Yudhishthira, no longer showed him hospitable regards. And unregarded though deserving of hospitable regards, Nala passed 3 nights in the outskirts of the city, living on water alone. And afflicted with hunger, the king went away in search of fruit and roots, Damayanti following him behind. And in agony of famine, after many days, Nala saw some birds with plumage of golden hue. And thereupon the mighty lord of the Nishadas thought within himself, these will be my banquet today and also my wealth. And then he covered them with the cloth he had on when bearing up that garment of his, the birds rose up to the sky. And beholding Nala nude and melancholy, and standing with face turned towards the ground, those rangers of the sky addressed him, saying, O thou of small sense, we are even those dice. We had come hither wishing to take away thy cloth, for it pleased us not that thou shouldst depart even with thy cloth on. And finding himself deprived of his attire, and knowing also that the dice were departing with it, the virtuous Nala, O king, thus spake unto Damayanti, O faultless one, they through whose anger I have been despoiled of my kingdom, they through whose influence distressed and afflicted with hunger, I am unable to procure sustenance, they for whom the Nishadas offered me not any hospitality, they, O timid one, are carrying off my cloth, assuming the form of birds. Fallen into this dire disaster, I am afflicted with grief and deprived of my senses. I am thy Lord, do thou therefore, listen to the words I speak for thy good. These many roads lead to the southern country, passing by the city of Avanti and the Raikshavath mountains. This is that mighty mountain called Vindhya, yon, the river Payashvini running seawards, and yonder are the asylums of the ascetics, furnished with various fruit and roots. This road leadeth to the country of the Vidarbhas and that, to the country of the Kosala. Beyond these roads to the south is the southern country. Addressing Bhima's daughter, O Bharata, the distressed king Nala spake those words unto Damayanti over and over again. Thereupon afflicted with grief, in a voice choked with tears, Damayanti spake unto Nashada these piteous words, O king, thinking of thy purpose, my heart trembleth, and all my limbs become faint. How can I go, leaving thee in the lone woods despoiled of thy kingdom and deprived of thy wealth, thyself without a garment on, and worn with hunger and toil? When in the deep woods, fatigued and afflicted with hunger, thou thinkest of thy former bliss, I will, O great monarch, soothe thy weariness. In every sorrow there is no physic equal unto the wife, say the physicians. It is the truth, O Nala, that I speak unto thee. Hearing those words of his queen, Nala replied, O slender-waisted Damayanti, it is even as thou hast said. To a man in distress, there is no friend or medicine that is equal unto a wife. But I do not seek to renounce thee, wherefore, O timid one, dost thou dread this? O faultless one, I can forsake myself but thee I cannot forsake. Damayanti then said, If thou dost not, O mighty king, intend to forsake me, why then dost thou point out to me the way to the country of the Vidarbhas? I know, O king, that thou wouldst not desert me. But, O Lord of the earth, Considering that thy mind is distracted, thou mayst desert me. O best of men, thou repeatedly pointest out to me the way, and it is by this, O godlike one, that thou enhancest my grief. If it is thy intention that I should go to my relatives, then if it pleaseth thee, both of us will wend to the country of the Vidarbhas. O giver of honors, there the king of the Vidarbhas will receive thee with respect. And honored by him, O king, thou shalt live happily in our home. Thus ends the 61st section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.